Hey everybody, welcome to the Entheo Show, coming up from the ground in your favorite county of Washtenaw. And now your guests, Michael File and Colin McDougall.
Hey guys, it's episode 7. I can't believe we're almost ending our fourth month, the third of our first year done. Very exciting. We got Aunt Bannister here again. Always a pleasure to have you. Of course, Colin, Jim. Colin, say hi.
Well, hey everyone, welcome. It's our Hash Bash episode.
Hash Bash Eve. Happy Hash Bash Eve.
Happy Hash Bash Eve. Eve. It's the cannabis special today. All things cannabis. A lot of people don't really think of it as an entheogen. It's certainly not covered by DNMI, but some states that don't have legal weed are including cannabis in their decrimination movements. So cannabis is an entheogen, and we are all about cannabis today. What we want to talk about before we got some guests. I know we have our usual go-tos. I read some book, but that was 2 weeks ago, and I totally forgot what I read. I've been busy with too many other projects. Again, I promise one of these days we're going to finish the book or, start a new one. But really want to hear from the people. All right, do you like the book reviews? Do you like hearing about the books? Is that something you look forward to? Because if it is, we'll make it happen. Maybe.
We're trying.
Just wanted to, maybe just recap last week's episode. We had a really good time with Hannah Spring from Mid-Michigan and also Shan Jones from Hazel Park, Michigan. And what's going on in those two cities there. And we'll look forward to seeing the momentum just moving forward just all across the state. We hope to have Jeff Irwin on in a couple weeks after Elise Savat. And then I think we're going to try and get like Southwest Michigan and maybe revisit some of these chapters, see what's going on there.
Yeah, I don't know if we talked about it with Hannah because I don't think it was official yet, but I do think East Lansing is their first target city for Mid-Michigan. They've done their research and it sounds like they got some champions on their side and they are active. That is a big group. They're in constant communication with our state team and each other every day. It's really fantastic to see the movement grow like this. Speaking of growth, well, maybe we'll save that for the news. It might be
I was on the show. I was on the not the show, but the call last night for Mid-Michigan.
Oh,
it was great. Yeah, Katie.
I do know they were talking about maybe a few extra things, but I don't really want to get into that until that's official.
Exactly, but they are going to start with East Lansing, as you alluded to.
Yeah, they've got a really great team put together.
You're right now. Yeah, I'm really excited.
So it's really exciting to see. I've been on all the Grand Rapids calls lately because I recently relocated to Grand Rapids. It's where I'm originally from. So I am now part of the DNGR team officially. Nice. And we've been working a lot on hashing out some new materials about plants and stuff that just haven't been done by any of the campaigns yet, including our statewide. So DN is an open source group. So any of the groups within it openly share all of their stuff with all the other groups. So as DNGR finishes their materials, I'm sure you'll start seeing it pop up with all the groups. And, that's what I really love about this. It's decentralized. It's open source. Anybody can get involved and the resources are there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. So if this sounds a little hard for where you're at, I call BS. We did the work for you. Most of the work was done before we even got here. So jump on. The resources are there. We're here to support. I'm yelling at you, Traverse City.
There you go. Oh.
So yeah, cannabis. Um, we got Jamie Lowell.
It's our plant of the show, right? It's our plant spotlight the plant this week.
Yeah, everything cannabis today. Tomorrow's hash bash. Like, it's older than 420. This is the original, the cannabis activism. This is how Ann Arbor ended up at a $5 fine originally in the 70s. Like, this
How we
is,
all met each other.
yeah, this
Like,
is how we met each other. This is where drug policy reform really jumped off.
Ann Arbor as a city and a
Yeah.
community because of that, because it's just stayed so true for the over the decades.
Absolutely. So what do we want to say about cannabis? I don't have any because, well, we'll get into that. But why don't you guys talk about cannabis because it'll just make me sad.
Well, I can talk about the first time I smoked. I was
yeah,
with-
how about we talk about that and like our experiences with it, like what like things changed, like our lives around it, I guess.
Sure.
So go ahead, Jim.
Feel free to jump in anytime. There's the so I was in high school, and I was at the Brown Jug restaurant in South U, and I was with my friend, and we were ordering a pizza, and we ordered the pizza, and we got our big pitcher of soda, and she's like, "Do you want to go to the back parking lot and smoke a joint?" And I was like, "Yes, let's go do that." So we went back there and smoked and went back in, and I really didn't feel anything at all until I was driving home. I dropped her off and I'm driving home. And then I started to feel like it was a late, slow reaction. Um, but it felt pretty good. I felt like I don't know. I didn't know what to feel. I think I had a lot of expectations and they kind of made it difficult for me to really enjoy the fruit.
Right on. I can tell you about mine too. I was 17 and I think I had just graduated like high school.
Yeah.
And I went to the Henry Ford Estates with a couple of my friends. There was probably like 6 or 7 of us. And there was like a blunt and a joint that went around. And I'd say like I really didn't feel like super high that day. And it wasn't until like a couple more times I remember at being at like a grad party and actually like feeling like being high for like the first time. And then like maybe a year and a half later, I feel like I got like good weed and I was like, oh, this is what it's supposed to like be like. and yeah, and so then I mean that was kind of like my first go at it. And then from about like 19 onward, I was like pretty much a stoner until like I was arrested when I was 22. And so I took, so I had quit for like, I guess like 8 months or so while I was on probation. And I know I got off probation like right before Christmas, and I smoked weed at midnight the following New Year's. So, and then I got like a medical card in May that year, and the next year was the Michigan legalized kind of like came out, and I was at I first went to get my medical card. My cousin took me to Home of Medicine. And I waited in the lobby and I got a card from the receptionist and called the doctor from there. And my probation agent, actually, she was the one she was a Washtenaw County probation agent. And she was like, "You're just going to smoke weed. Just get a medical card, kid." Kind of like speech to me while I was in there.
That was my last probation officer stance. And I was like, I already have it. And he's like, well, then I don't care. But I think you bring up a good point because I'm in kind of a weird limbo right now. So there was recently the State Court of Appeals case with Michael Dewey, where the state ruled that a judge essentially cannot tell you you cannot use medical marijuana if you have a doctor's recommendation and card as a punishment. And, you know, as a they can't essentially take away your medicine. Unfortunately, in my situation, you know, that should apply to bond, and it does, but my deal is unfortunately sobriety court, which is in and of itself a horrible approach to this idea of diversion programs. It's absolute shit. But what it does is, now that I've been referred to sobriety court, I have to get accepted. They can refuse me for any reason they want. Now, technically speaking, they can't refuse me for medical marijuana because of this court ruling. But they can, if I show them my medical card and say, hey, I'm going to smoke, they can say, oh, you didn't qualify for some other reason. So I'm still in this weird limbo. Part of sobriety court is also getting your license back. And so at my lawyer's suggestion, he doesn't even want me, once I get accepted to the program, to pull the medical card. Until then, I've been smoking for 26 years. Cannabis has changed my life for the better. It made me from, you know, a depressed, misunderstood young adolescent into, you know, somebody that like sees change that needs to be had and like runs and tries to like do whatever they can to be part of it, and, you know, tries to inspire people and sees beauty in life. Cannabis has made my life tolerable, beautiful, has taught me love, has brought me friends, and has never, ever once caused me to make a poor decision like alcohol has. And so I'm in this weird situation right now because my charge is an alcohol charge, and I'm going into sobriety court for that. But I'm in Kent County. They're one of the worst historically for probation and cannabis as is. And they're already kind of pushing back even in the probation department, even after this state appeals thing. So I don't really know what the point is, just kind of airing out my own laundry, thinking out loud, but it's kind of a tricky situation. And I don't know if you use cannabis openly or not, if you want to talk about that.
Yes, I'm trying to remember the first time I smoked cannabis, but I do remember going to I think my first hash bash was probably 38 years ago in 1983 as a freshman here at U of M.
That's when I was born.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, for many of the same reasons you guys and have enjoyed it, you know, it's just a great sense of community. And like the hash bash in particular, the not this year because we're virtual again, but usually there's like a really fun element of people that takes over the town of Ann Arbor, and it's just a really fun, funky, happy vibe for a few days before and a week afterwards. That is just really a great sense of community and a lot of great friendly people trying to just enjoy life and be nice and kind to each other. So that's been really attractive. And yeah, that's about it.
Cool.
Well, we've got a bunch of our guests starting to pop in, and we're going to be talking cannabis with them all. You know, it's Cannabis Day. It's pre-hash bash, hash bash eve. So before we jump in, why don't we go to the news?
Yeah, let's go to the news. Yeah, I got some news for everybody. The Hawaii House on Saturday adopted a resolution seeking an exemption from the Drug Enforcement Administration, stipulating that the state is permitted to run its medical cannabis program without federal interference. That's for Hash Bash weekend. And separately, the Senate in Hawaii approved two resolutions calling on state officials to study the therapeutic benefits of psilocybin mushrooms and create a plan that would provide equitable access to the fungi for adult patients. Despite creating a ballot committee here in Ann Arbor, Decriminalize Nature Michigan announced it does not intend to start an initiative for a ballot proposal regarding the decriminalization of naturally occurring psychedelics. Mike, can you expand on this right now before I continue in the news?
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying any attention. What are we expanding on? I'm sorry.
The fact that we created a ballot committee, but we don't
Oh
plan.
yeah. So yeah, that was. I'm assuming you're talking about the MLive article.
Yeah.
So we initially formed as a ballot committee, because it seemed like the thing to do. And immediately after, doing that, because, there's campaign finance and we've got money coming in, we have donations, we want to be able to track that. If we do end up having to go to a ballot, any money we had coming in that led towards that is going to have to be tracked. So we just proactively formed a ballot committee. However, we have zero intentions of actually going to ballot. We have full faith in Michigan legislators to do the right things for veterans, for people suffering from mental health, for people with problematic substance use. This is a no-brainer. This is not a partisan issue. This is something that affects everybody, and can benefit everybody. And especially in these times of COVID, when we're looking for solutions for the increase in overdose, the increase in, mental health problems, this is a great potential solution. And right now we have champions on both sides of the aisle. We have champions in both the House and Senate, and we are getting really, really close to introducing. I would say probably another month or two, you're going to start seeing real language being promoted by the news, and senators and representatives start talking about this. This is happening way faster than we ever thought. We were looking at 2024 originally when we started.
Yeah. That's great, Mike. That's great.
Yeah, it's really great to see where we're at. But yeah, we are a ballot committee. No, we are not going to the ballot.
Okay, excellent. Back to the news. In Massachusetts, yet again, Northampton City Council voted in support of decriminalizing entheogenic plants Thursday night, 8-0, putting the city near the forefront of the budding national movement against enforcing bans on psychedelic substances. The resolution stopped short of fully eliminating legal penalties for the use of entheogens, a category that includes psilocybin mushrooms. The Oregon Health Authority Psilocybin Advisory Board held its first official meeting on Wednesday as the state begins implementing the first program in the nation that puts the active ingredient in mushrooms to use in supervised therapy settings. That's incredible news. So all over the country, we've got some great stuff going in. And that's all I got for the news today, guys.
I got one thing. The Bay Staters group, the ones who were able, work with Decrim Nature Massachusetts, they have an activist training meeting. It's on Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Everyone's welcome, they said. But they I talked to some of them last night, and some of them were going to that city council meeting, but they wanted to invite whoever and see how their organizing and training goes.
I would like to say also, we have our next community meeting and activist training Thursday at 6 p.m. And then at 7:30 is the DN National Community Check-in that happens every second Thursday of the month.
Happy
but I want to point out one more thing you said, Jim.
420.
Oh, 420. It is the day, Cannabis Day. So do your thing. I will sit here and not smoke because this shitty situation. But I want to point out one more thing you said, Jim. Northampton, 8-0. That's what, 6 cities now with only one out of all of them, nay. Yeah. That is incredible. Over, maybe even close to 50 or over 50 now. council members across the country have said yes, and one said no. That should tell you something.
What city was that one from, Mike?
Cambridge, Massachusetts, Harvard University's city.
So yeah, we've got a lot of really fantastic guests here. We got Jamie Lowell and Rick Thompson. I don't even know where to start with them. I mean, I could say Jazz Cabbage Cafe, longtime Michigan activist. I'm gonna let them do that. But we also got Mark Passerini here, and that's really exciting because talk about a leader in the Michigan cannabis industry. We got some powerhouses for Cannabis Day.
Hey, let me just ask a couple quick questions here because I'm not sure how long I'm going to be able to stay. First of all, Massachusetts. I can't even believe one of those guys said no. Give me a break. Man Bannister, you said the goodness from Hash Bash lasts about a week in Ann Arbor. Is that how long it takes the cannabis smoke to dissipate? Really? That's cool.
Maybe I'll go there just to get a second hand, even though it's virtual. I mean, Adam Stone's going to be there and a few others. I'll just hang close.
You can see them all over town, everywhere.
Right. Put a camera on your shoulder and pretend you're actually getting paid. Yeah. The other thing I'd just like to say is thanks so much for the show. I appreciate the fact that you guys are pushing so hard in this field, and I'll probably be mostly listening today.
Right.
Sounds good, man.
Right on. Yeah, I also want to say thank you guys very much for inviting me on and having us on here today to talk about this stuff. And the predicament that Mike describes is further support for getting cannabis off of our state's controlled substances list. And there's a section in the Controlled Substances Act that says like these things are exempt: tobacco, alcohol, distilled spirits, some other stuff. We're trying to get marijuana added onto that list. And the discussion isn't too far away from adding on entheogens too, which of course, stupidly, on our state's controlled substances list are also a Schedule I drug. So that's one of the things that we still are fighting for, and another good reason to protest and to highlight issues at Hash Bash.
I think you actually bring up a really interesting point, Jamie, about our Controlled Substances Act. So when we prepared our language that is currently in the Michigan Legislative Services Bureau being reviewed and we're waiting to get it back, we sent a couple options. One of them is a traditional decrim, lowest law enforcement priority, shall not be, fined, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We also put in an option for a removed from the Controlled Substances Act as a second way. So our champions that we have identified and the champions that we're finding every day, that's going to be a discussion we're going to have with them as we get this language back from Legislative Services Bureau. We could go either way on this.
So what happened with cannabis originally, and this is the third legislative session in a row that I've kind of worked on this issue as far as cannabis is concerned, is Legislative Service Bureau originally told the person who tried to introduce the language to them that cannabis, or the scheduling and cannabis, is connected to so many things in the criminal and the health codes that this would just be too monumental to do. We just can't take it off, which of course is not a justifiable answer. That does not resolve the conflict. So we have to work on fixing whatever issues result from taking it off, maybe, but we can't talk about keeping it on there. That's indefensible. So that's the issue that we had with them. But ultimately, taking it off is the thing, because if it's still on there and somebody comes across a situation where they don't believe is covered in any other language of law, it'll resort back to the criminal code that it's connected to. And it's happening with cannabis right now. People are getting charged huge felonies for minor cannabis activity still, even though we legalize in the state. So ultimately, although these things are a process and you take what incremental gain you can get when it's achievable, that's where it needs to go for all of these things.
Definitely. And I wanted to introduce you both. How, Jamie, did you kind of get started with the whole activism thing? Because I know that usually people kind of credit you as the founder of Third Coast, and But like, what led you to that, and like, how did you come to like where you are now with it all?
Well, just try to keep it relatively short. There's a probably too long of a story in there to get into all the details, but I was a supporter of cannabis, user of cannabis since I was pretty young, so already convinced as far as that goes. But I was in real estate, and that whole thing fell apart for a while. Some people remember back around that time, and it was really the passage of that act, which I wasn't totally familiar with. Like I heard about it kind of toward leading up to the elections, and then it passed, and I wasn't completely familiar with the fact that that big effort was going on actually. But it provided for us in Ypsilanti, a group of us that were looking for something to do after the real estate scenario kind of took a dump, and that was there, and we just kind of naively thought, well, you know, they're doing this stuff in California. They passed this. We have a building that's not being used right now. Let's get going. And Ypsilanti turns out to be a fairly liberal and progressive town, so they didn't immediately reject us, and we were able to get into conversations and ultimately get a local dispensary license from them. But the obvious issues with all of this became apparent during the process, and I just stayed on trying to react to and help with whatever I thought was necessary to help move us forward, kind of towing the line between business, activism, advocacy, political, legal stuff, you know, whatever. There's still a balance there that I still try to look at now, and we still have a lot of work to do in all those regards. But certainly part of tomorrow is a celebration though too, because we have accomplished quite a bit. But that's the thumbnail version of how I got into it.
Third Coast is actually first club dispensary setting I ever experienced. So thank you for that, Jamie. Mark, how'd you get involved in cannabis, and what are your thoughts on where we're at and where we're going?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on the show, and thanks for all the work that you guys have been doing for entheogenic plants over the past year plus. And I know you've been very active in this movement, and I can't thank you enough for doing that. I know you've been very supportive of hash bash in the past and cannabis reform. You know, myself, like Jamie, I've been a lifelong cannabis user since I was back in the 1900s, since I got busted in Ann Arbor with my best friend and business partner smoking in our car when I was a freshman in college here at the University of Michigan. I didn't know, and I didn't choose my college based on the city's cannabis policy. And I felt like I just got lucky when the officer told Keith and I that, you know, we happen to be in a place that's decriminalized. Ann Arbor, as everybody on this call knows, is the first city in the country to decriminalize cannabis. And, you know, from that point, it just became more and more clear to me over the years how crazy our laws were. In 1999, I went to Amsterdam for the turn of the century, and it was just a kind of an uppercut to realize that night, that New Year's Eve, my buddies and I were out until 4 a.m, and that whole night we saw one police officer. And the reason was there wasn't need for all the cops like there are here in the United States on New Year's Eve when people are just getting hammered. You know, that culture is so different, and it revolves around cannabis to a point where it was a peaceful and just enjoyable night. It was awesome. So at that point, you know, obviously in 2008, the state of Michigan became the 12th state to allow for medical cannabis. And I was working in another green industry, in the renewable energy industry. So I went from renewables to cannabis as soon as President Obama said that he wouldn't go after state legal programs. Of course, that didn't happen, and a lot of our counterparts ended up going to prison, good friends of ours. And we still have a lot to fight for, like Jamie said. Hash Bash clearly this year is going to be a mixture of a celebration, but it's also still very much a protest because of the nonsensical cannabis laws that are throughout the country. I mean, we have, you know, now with New York and New Mexico, we probably have, I don't know, 17, 18 states that are legal, but none of them are really truly sensible policy. So there's definitely a lot to protest. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. I really would love to be on the diag. Of course, I'm gonna, you know, be with Jamie and Jim at the virtual event. So we're looking forward to it and looking forward to getting everybody back in the diag next year. Sorry, that was my phone.
I'm very glad you got Knight Rider for your ringtone. That makes me so happy.
It's better than Night Ranger, Mark.
True.
And Mark does all of that while there's a creature from Invasion of the Body Snatchers on the wall behind him, ready to just grab his brain. Isn't it amazing?
Yeah,
I
and
was kind of wondering what was going on there, but that's beautiful.
That's the root goddess.
Yeah, I was gonna say it looks kind of rootsy, earthy and rootsy to me.
Yeah, that's what we call the root goddess here in our bamboo room at the Home of Medicine.
Yeah, it's got a Buddha face. It's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all my years in Michigan and as a cannabis activist, I've never been to. I know Mark. I've known several of your staff over the years, really close friends, and I've just on the wrong side of the state and never made it over there. And it always looks so beautiful in the pictures.
But you did make it to Third Coast, though.
Oh, that was a little bit of help from Dave Allen.
I was going to ask Rick, how did you kind of become involved with the cannabis movement? I know that like you've been like the journalist since way before I was around. So like how did you become the journalist, and what was life like before 2008 and cannabis and it all?
Well, like most everyone else, I'm basically a lifelong smoker. I started my very first couple of months in college and have been doing it ever since. A very, very good friend of mine, Rick Ferris, designed a hydroponic system, which we called Big Daddy's Hydro. We began manufacturing Big Daddy's Hydro in a building on North End Avenue in Royal Oak Township. When 2008 came around and we got legalized, that really sort of went into overdrive. But in April of 2009, people started getting their cards, and they were still getting busted. And it was terrible because people thought they had freedoms that they didn't have, and the police didn't want to recognize the freedoms that they had earned. So later that year, right after Jamie opened Third Coast, Rick and I opened the Big Daddy's dispensary in Oak Park on North End, where we made the hydro systems, and we sold cannabis. Eventually, that grew into a 5-chain cannabis franchise in Michigan before a combination of attorney general actions and local law enforcement and sending people to jail just kind of killed our entire dude. But we started out of that office there, the Michigan Association of Compassion Centers. Jamie was a big part of the formation of that particular organization, and when we sued the Attorney General, Bill Schuette at that time, literally 3 or 4 days after the lawsuit was filed, they raided our Big Daddy's location where my offices were, where we had the magazine and where we had the Mac offices. So I was pushed out of the dispensary game, so to speak, and into the journalism game through circumstance, and I've never looked back. I mean, I love all the people that distribute cannabis. Thank you all, and you all took a lot of risks over the years, and I God bless you for doing it. But I found my niche. I love doing cannabis news. It is the thing that makes me want to stay in this game when people stab you in the back as many times as they do. So that's my bitty little teeny story.
Yeah. Now, what other podcasts are you on aside from Jazz Cabbage Cafe, Rick? I know you got a couple.
You have to go to Jamie for a minute.
Oh, sorry.
So Rick does have a show. It's called 420 Post, Wednesdays at 1 o'clock with Mike Brennan and Jamie Cooper. And it kind of it's more of a business oriented cannabis broadcast. There have been a lot of great guests on that show.
Yeah.
We both have been regularly on Medical Mondays now for like a year or something like that. And that's been a really fun couple of hours and late on Monday night. And Rick has been doing some other stuff too, and I wish I could describe it accurately, but he's for like an organization out of state. He's been representing Michigan for, what's going on here in the cannabis world. He'd have to give you the details on that. And of course, speaking for Rick, he gets invited to be on many shows and kind of represent like what's going on currently in Michigan and cannabis and stuff like that too. So I think the regulars though would be Medical Mondays, Jazz Cabbage, and 420 Post.
Right on.
And they're all good. In fact, Michigan has got many great shows, including this one. I was just on the MICIA. Sorry, Mike?
It shows.
Yeah. Smoke and Rope. Great one. My Canic Cast. Michigan Bro Bros Show. There are many. And, you know, get in on a little bit of all of them. Just like when you're interested in a topic, searching around YouTube or whatever, it's not like you just stick to one source necessarily. You kind of see what everybody's saying about what's going on. And Michigan's got some great opportunities for that, which is pretty cool to be a part of that family.
You know, speaking of work in other states, we were talking about this before the show came on. And Michigan, when we passed medical, we did something that had only been done one other place in the country, Rhode Island. We included reciprocity.
Reciprocity, yeah.
Yeah, for medical cards, meaning if you had a Colorado medical card already, you could come to Michigan and you could purchase medical marijuana and use medical marijuana. Since we did that, there have been several more states that have gone medical, and reciprocity still isn't at the forefront of a lot of these bills. New Mexico being a big exception there. But there's not many states doing that. And, you know, here in Michigan, we're a little ahead of the game. We're talking, you know, clemency and expungements and those sorts of things. But there's lots of places in the country that are still really far behind. And as experienced cannabis activists, I think that's something we really need to encourage in those other states is as they create their medical programs, or if that's what they already have, including reciprocity. Because, I mean, I know I like to travel, but it's not just about me. There's lots of people that this could benefit. And as cannabis activists, I think that's a discussion we need to be having.
In Hawaii, I think you can, if you book it like 30 days out, you can have your medical card, like a Hawaiian medical card for 30 days in Hawaii if you have a medical card already. I saw something like that. It was like a couple of months ago they passed a law like that.
Yeah, I think some states do. Yeah, if you can provide some documentation before you arrive, they'll give you, you know, what you need.
I think Maine is the same way.
But speaking of like other states, this week we had 2 states pass marijuana legalization. New
And a
York.
third kind of on the way, right?
What's the third? I guess.
Well, there's Virginia,
Oh,
New York, and New Mexico.
Well, Virginia was a couple weeks ago, right?
Okay.
But yeah, Virginia was like a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. But New York, and New Mexico. New Mexico is going to be the third because I think it needs to be signed still by the governor, but the legislature passed it. So I think that's 17 now.
Right on.
That's great.
And we were just talking about kind of going backwards a little bit. You know, some of the newer programs, and I only kind of know about New York on the surface right now, but there's no home growing.
Oh, there isn't?
No, and
I thought
amounts and things. What do you think that there is, Colin?
I thought that he might have caved or something. I saw an article like a couple days ago saying that.
Oh, and that's one of the things that he opened up on. Possibly?
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, that'd be
know.
great. That's, you know, like Michigan's is pretty good, you know.
I think it might have said like 6 plants, like, but I don't know if it was like 6 plants like ours. I have to look at it though. I may be wrong, but
one common one is 6 plants per, you know, adult up to 2 adults. So it would be 12
Yeah.
plants total or something like that. And some are just at 6 or whatever they are. I mean, at least to be able to get that started, it should just be you know, however much you want to grow, whatever the resources of your house allow, however much time and energy you want to put into a garden, grow whatever plants you got. But, you know, we're not quite there yet, as is
That's
the
a
case
big
with a lot of things.
Of what we're doing with Decrim Nature, the medical movement, the legalization movement is happening. It has got tremendous power and resource behind it, or research behind it. It's going to happen. What we're doing right now with this decrim is we're protecting home grow. We're protecting accessibility for people that can't afford to get these services. And the idea that a state could legalize and not allow home grow, or even scarier, medicalize and not allow home grow, like denying patients access, is a crazy thing. And that's a big piece of what we're doing here. So I'm glad you bring that up. One of the proactive things I noticed New York did is, if you remember 2018, we voted in November, it passed, but it legalized December 6th, 2018. New York
Went into effect. Yep.
Is Colin still with us? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What else do we want to talk about today?
I want to talk more about Hash Bash, and just we should be getting more guests here, hopefully in the next few minutes or so.
Yeah, we need some fresh blood in here.
Yeah, there's Hash Bash is the model we set for Entheo Fest. So it's a great model. We like the idea that a protest at the Diag, and then an after party at another location, and the Monroe Street crew is helping us with that after party. So I expect to see something really similar to Hash Bash with a lot of the same folks involved.
Awesome. Well, Hash Bash should, in part, it would seem like a natural forum to be adopting this issue too along the way.
Right.
Kind of go hand in hand.
I think I actually know, but I think you might find a couple things in Hash Bash tomorrow that will be very pro mushroom, pro decriminalized nature.
Good point.
I don't think it's a platform that we're ignoring by any means.
Right on. So that is a good point. Then we are putting on an online, presentation that is going to be, professionally kind of facilitated and produced, which is really cool. And it's packed with a lot of really big time, kind of important perspectives from presentations from a lot of people, a lot of high level elected officials and well-known athletes, and a wide range of people who've been active this last year, and all types of stuff. Mark's usually the person that runs down the list. I think that would be a good job for him.
Can we go around the room and talk about our first Hash Bash we attended? And I'll go first since I brought it up. I think it was like the mid 80s when I went, and I was with a buddy of mine. Growing up just south of Ann Arbor, we'd get dropped off in downtown Ann Arbor and get to walk around, and check out stuff and kind of cruise. That Saturday was Hash Bash, and we walked through the Diag and smelled that beautiful smell that I didn't know what it was. I saw people up in the trees hanging and smoking, and sitting on blankets everywhere. It was pretty cool. We kind of walked right through because we felt a little out of place, but that was my first Hash Bash.
My first Hash Bash, I believe, was 99. In 2000, I want to say 2, one of my friends actually was arrested as Hash Bash for providing another person with a joint, a person that sought them out, and he had told them no several times, and they kept coming back because, oh man, that weed smells very good. Can I please, let me buy a gram off you? And he finally just handed him a joint, and it took 10 seconds, and it was an undercover, and they popped him for distribution at Hash Bash. And now he's a lawyer because of that experience. So Hash Bash, I don't think I've missed many Hash Bashes since my first one. So last year, I think the digital one, I was in jail. I think that's the first one I missed in 20 years.
Wow.
I think my first hash bash, I went to Monroe Street and I thought it was hash bash. I think it was like I was either 19 or 20, and but I know it was definitely Monroe Street because like I didn't really know there was like two different things. Then when my like first one that was hash bash that I went to was in 2016, I think, when it snowed. And I think Darren McCarty spoke and Tommy Chung spoke. Yep.
Nice. Who wants to go? Rick?
My first was 2010. Big Daddy's was the first primary sponsor of the Monroe Street Fair. So we were there and then went over to Hash Bash. Adam graciously allowed me to speak on the microphone as like the last guy to get on there because I happened to have been pestering him all day long and was hanging around, and he'd sort of heard my name. But that was probably one of my funnest Hash Bashes because I didn't have any responsibilities. I took pictures, I floated around, I made new friends, and man, that's the spirit of the event, isn't it?
Totally. That's how I remember my first Hash Bash, is making a lot of new friends. My first was my freshman year of college back in the 1900s. 1994 was my first. Found out the other day that Robin Schneider was also at that Hash Bash for her first Hash Bash. We didn't bump into each other. Maybe we did. I don't know. But it was awesome. You know, I mean, that was when I first started to realize that, this was after my best friend and I were busted for smoking in the car. But it occurred to me that, I'm not alone. A lot of people think that these cannabis laws are bullshit, and people were passionate about it. There was a lot of fire in the speeches, and it was inspiring. It was definitely something for me that I'll never forget. It was, I think since then I've probably been to about 15 Hash Bashes or so. But yeah, it's an event. It's a hell of a protest. Looking forward to getting back together for another big one in 2022.
Jamie.
Yeah, so I was also mid 80s, somewhere between either 87 or 86 or 87, I guess. And I heard a guy make a very simple statement, although it has stuck with me and helped to kind of like offer a lot of long-lasting perspective and focus. I did get to meet him at a Marvin tribute party a few years ago. I don't remember his name though, but it was cool to be able to talk about it. But as I was hanging out, checking this out, and kind of awestruck a little bit at what was going on, he says, "We're at war with the plant." And I just thought, like, how ridiculous is that, really? It just offered. I was already, in support, let's say, or whatever, or not worried about cannabis or anything like that. But it just offered up some perspective and focus that has stuck with me ever since.
Yeah, I think mine was somewhere in there, Jamie. You and I probably crossed paths there in the late 80s, because I think you and I were hanging around with some of the same fellas, Harm's Way and Motown Rage, Razor Ray and Bug and Steve Berger and all those guys played at the Monroe Street Fair. So I think that's where Jamie and I originally met back then. And so yeah, it's just a fun, really fun party to be at. And so I think I started going way back in 83 for sure, and just go every year, just because it is such a great time to be out seeing everybody and hearing the speeches, and then going to Dominic's and the Monroe Street Fair afterward. And then thank you so much, Mark, for when I was on council there, that was a huge honor to get to actually address the crowd as an elected official. That was a real high point of years of coming to Hash Bash. So it's all good.
And Bannister whipping out the Harm's Way reference. That's a
Yes.
win right there. All right.
Hey, if I may, Razor Ray, who was just mentioned, is going to be hanging out with us in Lansing, April 13th at the Botanical Company in Franklin Fields as we do a Jazz Cabbage broadcast from there. So we remain friends from way back when. And those guys have definitely been supportive of cannabis this entire time. No question.
I think Ann actually brought up a funny point to me. She was talking about Razor Ray playing at the Monroe Street Fair. That's how I met you, Jamie. Was Razor his mutual friend? I think I actually came to a Jazz Cabbage Cafe show.
It was the Dana Cake shows.
Oh, right. Yep. No, that's but that's how we met.
Yeah, right on. That
I
is
think
right.
he'd be fun to have on here too.
Sure.
I think his experience with death is definitely in the entheogenic realm, and it's tooth and throat singing and some of his meditation stuff that he works on. Definitely right up our alley.
I talked
Yeah, when
to
he
him the other
describes
day.
that experience, it is
Get him
pretty
on.
intense. It's obviously he had that very clear and detailed experience that he describes, whether it took place in his head or somehow he entered a new realm or something that happened to him.
What were you gonna say, Colin? I'm sorry.
I was gonna say I just talked to Ray the other day, and we should definitely reach out to him and get a show with him on here, talk about that experience. I guess can you kind of Mark? I know you know a lot of the speakers that are gonna be on here. Can you kind of go over some of the and there's some professional athletes involved?
Sure. Yeah, we've got a number of professional athletes from pretty much all of the major sports leagues in the U.S. From the NBA, we've got Al Harrington, who started a brand named after his grandmother, Viola, and that brand is very focused on social equity. So Al Harrington will be speaking. We also have arguably the best wide receiver in NFL's history from the Detroit Lions, Calvin Johnson, also known as Megatron. He was just recently inducted into the Hall of Fame just a few days ago, actually. So that's pretty cool. I sit with him on the board of the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association. We also have, of course, Darren McCarty, longtime Hash Bash supporter. I think this will be his 4th or 5th Hash Bash that he's spoken at. He's, of course, a Hall of Famer in the NHL from the Detroit Red Wings. We also have the ex-pitcher from the Detroit Tigers, Joel Zumaya, which is pretty exciting. So a lot of Detroiters. Oh, and of course, Eugene Monroe. Eugene is the very first active NFL football player, really any professional athlete to speak out for cannabis reform in his league. So Eugene, I think this will be his 3rd or 4th Hash Bash also. So those are the professional athletes. I can run through some of the elected officials.
I want to add real quick. Rob Sims will be with Calvin Johnson, who also played with the Lions, and Darren McCarty will be live with us in studio.
That's right. Yep, Darren will be live, and then Rob's played with Calvin Johnson. He just sent in his video, so we have both of their videos ready to go. So, and then when it comes to elected officials, we have quite a few. I guess I'll start at the federal level. Debbie Dingle will be making it back. This will be her 3rd Hash Bash. She was live and in person in 2019. She was going to be live and in person in 2020 until we had to take it digital because of the pandemic. And she came on a Zoom call last year, which was very cool. And she sent in a video for this year's call. Debbie Dingle, as well as her counterpart from Oregon, we have Earl Blumenauer. Earl Blumenauer, also a longtime Hash Bash supporter. He is he is definitely the biggest champion for cannabis reform on Capitol Hill over the past 3 or 4 decades. So he's going to be speaking, as well as our governor, Gretchen Whitmer, who also came out in 2018 as she was campaigning to be governor. In 2019, she sent in a video, a recorded message for the Hash Bashers, and we'll be doing the same this year. And then, of course, Dana Nessel, the state's top cop, Attorney General Dana Nessel, will be speaking. Of course, Jeff Irwin, our state senator, who has really taken the mantle in the state of Michigan for cannabis reform. He's been doing this for a long time, before it was popular. 10 years ago is when I met Jeff, and he has been a true champion for the cause ever since. And then we have our House Minority Floor Leader, Youssef Rabi. He's our state rep here in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and he is also a great champion for our movement. Who am I missing? Ellie Savitt. Ellie Savitt is the Washtenaw County
prosecutor. And he'll be on this show next show here.
Oh, good.
Oh,
good. That's
yeah.
awesome. He was recently elected, and he has been extremely supportive of not just cannabis reform, but the entheogenic movement too, which is very cool.
And just criminal justice in general. He's like great. So.
Yeah.
I
Priorities.
do believe, Colin said Ellie Savat's going to be on our next show, but you had also mentioned Senator Irwin. I do believe will be our show after that. Another real big proponent for not just cannabis, but entheogens and really just ending the drug war in general, because, well, we all know it's bullshit.
But it looks like we've been joined by Dawn Schultz. Hey, Dawn.
Hey, Dawn.
Oh,
Thanks for coming in.
She's part of the Hash Bash committee too.
I know you're on mute right now, Dawn, but what about your...
Yes, I'm trying to send Nick the link. Nick's trying to log in too, but he's having a hard time
I
getting.
just sent you a text to send him that link.
Oh, you did? Okay. Okay, good.
Nick too?
Yeah, Zattel's going to be joining us.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Mark, for taking care of that.
Great.
Hey, everyone.
Hey. Dawn, what was your first Hash Bash? Have you been to a Hash Bash before?
Yes, I've only been to one, 2019 Hash Bash, the last in-person event. So it was my first cannabis reform rally. I'm much more focused on the industrial hemp. So the cannabis world was a little bit new to me in that day. But yeah, overwhelmingly made an impression, obviously, because here I sit a couple of years later on your committee. So it was a great experience. The biggest impression that day for me was Q's speech. Just so much power in her ability to deliver the message of cannabis reform and how important it is that, Nick and Mark and Jamie, everybody was just really, was a great event. Changes your whole perspective on the world.
2019 was a fun Hash Bash. We're also joined now by Nick Zattel as well. We're going around the room asking everybody about their first Hash Bash. But I do want to say, Nick Zattel, I met the same weekend I met Colin at an SSDP conference. Well, me and Colin went together, and Nick helped me drive us all back. And it was a really great meeting of the minds, SSDP. That was my first conference there. But we're talking about Hash Bash. Nick, when was your first, and how long you been going?
My first, I think, was 2009, and then the next year I was a freshman, and I had joined SSDP, so we went to the Hour of Power on the Diag and ran over to Monroe Street Fair, where we were selling bottled water and tie-dye T-shirts, trying to raise money for the org, and and then the next year I worked with Adam to pull the permit for the Diag, and I've been involved ever since. So I believe 2011 was sort of my first year of like formal involvement with the bash.
You went as a participant. You started going as an organizer.
Sort of, yeah. Well, I started as a participant, and then the next year as as an activist with SSDP, and we had a booth on Monroe Street, and so I, very fond memories of that, and there was always a pretty big, presence of SSDP, Students Responsible Drug Policy there. We would, it was one of the biggest fundraisers we'd have because we were able to move T-shirts and, raise for the local org. And then one year I remember we had just a bunch of people from different chapters like Kent State. Chris Wallace with Kent State came up, and some people from Western Michigan. And that kind of manifested again in 2019 with all of the different Michigan chapters and some people from Chicago as well. It was pretty. It's always a great meeting place, and not just for SSDP, for normal and for just 100 different friend groups and cannabis groups. It's really a great meeting of the minds in a lot of ways.
Do you have one hash bash that sticks out above the rest, Nick, as the organizer?
It's hard to say. Maybe for obvious reasons, the most recent one is the freshest in my memory and stands out in a lot of ways. But I actually do like to tell people, and this is true. I don't just like to tell people, but I think my favorite speech of all time is actually Colin. It was yours, and I remember it very well. We were just about to start up the new petition drive, or maybe we were already in it, but we had Colin speak, and I just remember it's hard to give a speech at Hash Bash and get people to pay attention unless you're just like sort of screaming free the weed and things like that. But for whatever reason, I remember a lot of people just really paying attention to what you had to say, and I thought it was really well delivered because you'd mentioned how you'd collected over 1,000 signatures, and you did that by you'd said something about how you went up to, maybe twice as many people as were in that crowd at the time. So I just remember thinking that was a really great point, and, certainly inspired people to get on board with us and do their part. So one of my favorites.
Cool. I'm glad that I hold that title.
Yeah, pretty impressive coming from Nick, right?
Yeah.
That is really impressive, Colin. That's a great story. Thanks for sharing.
It's funny how Colin asked the question, though. It's like he kind of set it up so that.
Oh, man, I see what you're doing there, Colin.
No, it was nothing of the sort.
But this Hash Bash, it's virtual, but like you said, it is a protest. And this year is no different. Cannabis is legal, but there's still a lot of problems. Tomorrow is the launch of a really huge next step for Michigan in cannabis reform, a clemency project. Does anybody here want to talk about that a little bit more? Because I just found out about it.
Oh, Jamie, you're on mute.
Jamie, yep.
There was a coalition that was formed around the time and directly after Michael Thompson's release, based upon a lot of the groups and organizations that came together to work on that. It is the Michigan Cannabis Freedom Coalition. And yes, at the Hash Bash tomorrow, there will be a video that helps to explain and represent the launch of this. And there was a lot of promise from that first effort. Of course, we all hope that Michael Thompson is the first of many. And that's why the coalition is sticking around and working on many more people to get out of prison. But it's been encouraging to other organizations around the country. The National Criminal Defense Lawyers Association is coming in to work with us and bringing in lawyers pro bono to help file things for people as cases are determined along the way. So there's a real effort here. Funds have been raised, and a lot of just great people and organizations coming together to continue this effort and get more people out of prison. The business is booming in Michigan here, and yet people are in prison for the same activity right now.
And one thing we should mention too is, for the first time in 50 years, Hash Bash has raised a pretty decent amount of money this year that will go directly to the Michigan Freedom Cannabis Coalition, as well as the John Sinclair Foundation. So, in the past, obviously, Hash Bash is free. There's no ticket cost. It doesn't make any money, but we've been able to gather. I don't know. And Jim, you've had a huge. You've been a huge help in getting all of these sponsorships. But these probably 20, 25 different companies have thrown in some sponsorship money, and a huge portion of that will go towards both of those foundations. So we're pretty excited about being able to give back.
Yeah, that's great.
Sorry. So we are an entheogen show. It's in our name, but we don't talk about cannabis very much. So probably there's some of our listeners that don't actually know who Michael Thompson is. You want to give us a little bit of background there?
Sure. So Michael Thompson was one of the longest cannabis prisoners in the country. I think he was arrested in the 60s. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jamie. Was it the 60s or 70s? And
no,
he served 25 years, so probably not that far.
I think
back.
he was in the 90s.
I'm sorry. Okay, so he served 25 years. He was a concert promoter out of Flint, and I think that the night he was busted was the night that he had put together a concert for Aretha Franklin in Flint.
Really?
Yep.
Well, the guy had done a lot of really good things in the city, and one of the things he talks about since he's been out is there was mention of a funds coming in to be used to help crack down on some crime, and the whole description was around a lot of youth that were running a little bit errant. There were a few like little gangs being formed and stuff like that. And he actually stepped in and helped to quell that situation and to get some people jobs working with the city and to stop these gangs from like battling with each other and stuff like that. And he thinks that there was a little vindictiveness and targeting going on because of how he intervened with that whole process and the funding that was involved and stuff like that. And that could be true. And he was a very smart, sharp dude and saw what was going on. So ultimately, though, one of the things about his case, he did have an underlying cannabis scenario. He was selling, I think, small amounts of cannabis to people, making a few extra bucks. And he happened to have like some guns, and they were not like active guns. They weren't being used during the commission of a crime. Some of them were antiques and not even functional. And they were in a box in his house. And that's what led to the major felonies, was because of the underlying cannabis charge and then the guns that came after. They weren't even being used in any, and it was just gross. That's one of the reasons why there was some support to get him off, because it's just so ridiculous. But that's another reason why we need to take cannabis off the state's controlled substances list, because still underlying cannabis charges lead to additional harsh penalties for stuff like that, unnecessarily and unreasonably so. And as soon as he came out, walked out of the prison doors at 4:00 in the morning on a very cold Thursday, I think in late January. He immediately started talking about going to work and helping others who were in there who were not being treated well. He exposed the whole thing right then and there and got right at it. He's a very cool dude. So, and he hopefully is, again, first of many. I'm sorry, Jim.
Well, no, don't be. He's speaking tomorrow. Obviously, that's what we're talking about him because of his story so compelling. Let's go back to the early 70s when Hash Bash, the reason for Hash Bash being even coming to reality. Can somebody explain that a little bit? Just give us the story.
Yeah, I can take that one, and I'll try to package it neatly into a short explanation, because it is a really, really interesting story, and it involves John Sinclair, who is a poet, and he will be speaking as well. He submitted a video to us, and he was one of the founders of the White Panther Party, which was formed in a show of unity for the Black Panther Party. So there were a lot of the hippies and radicals in Ann Arbor and Detroit at the time. John was one of the producers and promoters for the MC5. And anyway, so he was a political target, and he, on the eve of Christmas Eve, December 23rd, one year, he gave a couple joints to some undercover officers. I think it had been his third third strike, they really threw the book at him and gave him a 9.5 to 10-year sentence in prison. And he ended up serving about 2 to 3 of those years. And there was always an effort to get him an appeals hearing in the courts so that he could, that they could hopefully overturn his conviction. They wouldn't grant him the appeals hearing, but they continued their efforts. There's a very well-known concert that happened at Chrysler Arena, the John Sinclair Freedom Rally. Happened in December 1971, and it featured John Lennon and Yoko Ono. Stevie Wonder made a guest appearance, Bob Seger, Commander Cody, the poet Allen Ginsberg, the Abby Hoffman and Bobby Seale, the Black Panther, and just a cast of really sort of the who's who of that time. Abby Hoffman actually got on stage at Woodstock and kind of crashed the Who's set to lambast everybody for partying while John Sinclair was in prison. But anyway, so that concert, the John Sinclair Freedom Rally, was successful in getting John that appeals hearing. And so John was released from prison. The Michigan Supreme Court ruled his particular case to be unconstitutional. And it was unconstitutional on the grounds that the marijuana laws in Michigan were cruel and unusual punishment. And so for that reason, the marijuana laws in Michigan were just wiped from the books. That only happened for a couple of weeks, really like 3 weeks in March. And then April 1st, they were set to put into effect the Controlled Substances Act at a statewide level, which I could be wrong. Mike might know about this, but I believe that act was born out of Timothy Leary versus the United States, or the United States versus Timothy Leary. But that might be a topic for another time in this show. And anyway, the new laws were supposed to take effect April 1st, so 50 years ago yesterday. And the hippies in Ann Arbor pulled out a full-page ad in the Michigan Daily and kind of as a prank told everyone the Who and I think Van Morrison were going to be on the diag. So I don't know if anyone took that too seriously, but people showed up and it was just a big smoke down and sort of a fuck you to the, if you'll pardon my Irish, big fuck you to the state for reinstating new marijuana prohibition after, they just ruled that their own marijuana prohibition was unconstitutional.
Right on.
That's how the first hash bash came about, and then it continued through the 70s as an annual thing.
And I appreciate those extra details on this one. We've been talking about this a lot lately, and first time you added in a few little extra color. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
One of the things you said, Michigan for a few weeks had no cannabis law. We were the first. I hope everybody's paying attention, and that's why we're leading in Entheo Gens, and that's why everyone here does what they do. The Mittens here, and we're not going anywhere, and we're going to keep pushing until this is right.
So since I'm adding a little bit of color and details to this, I don't know if we were the first, because I tried to look this up one time, and I think something similar happened around that same time in Hawaii and Illinois. So someone could, I don't remember the details on that, but I think I don't know, maybe things were looking up for marijuana at one point in the 60s, and then it just sort of, we just devolved into the Reagan admin somehow.
Well, nonetheless, there's precedent for stripping the law of those things all at once, despite some of the concerns that people have in the legislature.
I do appreciate that clarification, though. I like to provide accurate information, and that's been
I know.
a long time.
Well, I want Michigan to be first
And-
still. I like to think we're number one in a lot of ways.
And some of it was specifically cannabis be considered a euphoriant as opposed to a narcotic. Some of it was, or so John Sinclair discusses when he talks about this.
We'll have to get John Sinclair on one of these shows sometime too. Maybe he can talk a little bit about it too.
I
But
think
that
he
was
would like
pretty. I didn't know the thing about the. They told people there would be like the Who or Van Morrison on the diag though. That's something I never heard of. That's pretty funny.
That would have got me down there.
I know.
Somewhere has a copy of that ad framed. I don't know where that was, but I think it's in Ann Arbor. Somebody there should know.
Yeah, and I know the other day Adam said that it was first called Hash Fest, and then the Ann Arbor News changed or like wrote in the newspaper the Hash Bash because it sounded better. So that's how the name came about.
They were right. It does sound better.
Worked.
Leave it to a newspaper writer.
What do they do with Entheo Fest then?
We'll see.
And that reminds me that we've also invited to the Entheo Fest on September 19, William Leonard Picard, and he has accepted. So he's another one of those great pioneers from decades ago who served time in prison and was released just last summer as part of the letting prisoners out for COVID. And so
Was he in the Michigan prison system?
No, he was a federal prisoner, and he went to. Do you want to go into it more, Ann?
No, you
Or-
go ahead, Colin.
I was gonna
Can
say
you just repeat the date that fest is going to be on so I can write it down, please?
it's gonna be on
September 19th.
September 19th. It's a Sunday, and it's 1 year after the Ann Arbor City Council decriminalized entheogens in Ann Arbor. They did it on, I think, the 21st. So it's going to be like a yearly thing.
The Mushroom Day is September 20th as well.
And yeah, Mushroom Day is September 20th. So it'll either fall, sometimes it'll fall on,
Nice.
hopefully.
And it starts at 11/11 on September 19th.
But
Nice.
Leonard Picard was, he went to federal prison for 20 years or so, a life sentence for manufacturing with intent to deliver LSD, I believe. And I guess he was pretty much responsible for a lot of the LSD in the 1990s, is what I've heard. Mike, do you know a little bit more about him?
I know quite a lot about Leonard Picard, but with 12 minutes, you got a wormhole there. I think
Yeah.
that's going to be its own special thing.
Maybe we can get him on the show sometime.
I think that's totally feasible. But I recommend to anybody that watches this show and is into what we're doing, pick up his book that he wrote in prison. It's a bit of a tome. He had a lot of time on his hands. It's like 830 pages. But it is one of the most beautiful stories I have ever read, and it's his story. And I'm really excited to have him for Entheo Fest, to potentially have him on the show. Yeah, I don't want to dive too much into his history until we can get him to tell it, because what an amazing story. I mean, double degrees, Harvard.
It's great to hear that he's free. That's good
Yeah.
enough for now. That's for sure.
Brilliant man. Just got the raw end of a deal.
I do want to point out the observation that he's kind of got like the trifecta of Star Trek names. William, Leonard Picard, William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, and Jean-Luc Picard. But
Good point. Good point, Nick.
that probably won't excite anyone but me. But I just thought I should add it.
It's
Engage.
My mind is just now.
blown. Well, we got about 10 minutes here to. Anyone want to plug anything as we go around? Yeah.
I guess, are there any other speakers at Hash Bash that we should be like looking out for?
Yeah, I mean, aside from all of those elected officials and professional athletes, we also have a couple of medical professionals coming back to the stage. Dr. Sue Sisley who is just a pioneer in her field. She is like the cannabis researcher. She'll be back, and she's got a really great speech that she submitted just a few days ago. We also have Dr. Gus Rosania from the University of Michigan. He is making his way back to the virtual Hash Bash stage. He is the professor at the School of Pharmacy at U of M. He was the first University of Michigan professor to come out and speak on the Hash Bash steps. I want to say it was in 2017, 2018, something like that. But we've got a number of, local activists and advocates in Michigan. Obviously, the Chuck Reams of the world. Adam Brook will be there. We have obviously Anquinette will be our MC. Whom
I want to mention also we've got a lot of community partners who, of course, the Michigan Psychedelic Society, Decriminalize Nature Michigan, Students for Sensible Drug Policy. We've talked about those, and we've got great entertainers as well. Laith El Sadi and Cosmic Knot and Laganja Estranja. But so for me, having seen these videos already, some of the most entertaining stuff is what our community partners brought. The video by Normal is great. The video by Students for Sensible Drug Policy is great. We have Monroe Street Fair giving a little recap of who they are and what they do, because that's a big part of the day at Hash Bash. And of course, the psychedelic groups and Reads and Weeds as well. The podcast Shelley Smith runs, it's sort of a cannabis book club.
Really
and
great show.
Yeah, really great show, and it's just a great video where she does a great recap of all the books they've been reading and why. It's I don't know, it's really fun, and so those are really exciting and entertaining as well.
Oh, that
it's
might be.
all
Aha! I just realized now why she asked me to make a little short video for her. Okay.
Yeah, me too.
I just put that together. Okay.
So I guess we got a couple of Reads and Weeds guests here. Actually, she just asked me to put together a short collection of psychedelic titles and do like a set of mini-sodes. Just cover a whole bunch of psychedelic books really fast.
And you've done that with her before, I know, and she's talked about that being like probably the most viewed show that she's done. So that's, I'm sure that's why she's interested in going deeper into that.
Oh wow!
Very interesting to a lot of people checking out her show. So that's awesome.
I talked to Shelley and I just never heard that. Thank you.
You have a question in the chat too about the live versus digital tomorrow.
I actually just got a text from some members of Psychonaut Academy of Detroit, a group I'd like to have on our show at some point. But they just texted me and they're like, wait, Hash Bash is virtual? Like, they were excited, it's the Washtenaw, we've already decrimmed entheogens. So, people are excited to go there and gift their wares because it's one of the beautiful pieces of the decrim Ann Arbor and Washtenaw bits that we've done is we allow gifting, and what a time to be alive. But virtual Hash Bash. So maybe 2022 will already be statewide by then. And yeah.
People will be down there anyway. Those going down though have been like clear about encouraging people to show up and be respectful of others and follow protocols and things like that. Because there are some people, as Nick has pointed out, that are really passionate about this. They have to be at that location at that time, and and hopefully everything works out really well for that. But the reason that there weren't permits issued for the city or by the university is because mass gatherings are still discouraged, and we need to have this online version for a alternative for those not making it down there this year. But there is some action there, and hopefully it all goes really well and people are respectful of each other. But yes, next year is going to be awesome. After a couple of years.
We're going to have to make up for 2 years of not smoking together.
Right on.
A lot of smoking to do.
Well, and this would have been true if last year we'd been able to gather in person, but it will also be the first hash bash where cannabis is legal for sale in dispensaries, because we'd legalized it in 2018, but dispensaries didn't open until December of 2019, or the recreational provisioning centers anyway. So it'll really draw quite the crowd. I think that's a given, and yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah.
Well,
But a lot of people are doing both too, by the way, just to
Yeah.
point that out. So
And we will have a live stream on the virtual hash bash for at least a few minutes of what's going on in the diag
awesome.
during that hour of power. Yep.
So we have about 4 minutes left. I want to do quick roundtable here. Last thoughts from everybody. Is Rick still with us? Maybe.
I'm still here. Listen, as far as my final thoughts, we mentioned a bunch of radio shows and podcasts today. This is good stuff. There are a lot of cannabis themed podcasts. The field is kind of crushed with them. It's not in this issue, in this field. And this is where some of the most dramatic political revolution is happening in our state's history right now. So congratulations to you for being a part of that, and thank you for tolerating my illness today.
Thank you
Thanks
for
for
coming,
coming
even
on,
though
Rick.
you're out. Mark.
Yep. Okay. Well, I mean, final thoughts, if you don't feel comfortable during a pandemic to go and congregate on the diag, definitely tune in to twitch.tv/A2hashbash. Twitch.tv/A2hashbash. It's gonna be an epic program, like Nick said. Looks like Nick hopped off, but we put a lot of work and effort into making the programming seamless and smooth and professional and exciting and inspiring. Obviously, nothing will be like the real thing. We wish we, weren't in a pandemic and we could, 15 to 20,000 of us can go down to the diag and comfortably protest the way we have for the last 50 years. But, we wanted to put together a alternative virtual hash bash, and I think we've done a really good job with it. And I'm excited that hash bash is going from an Ann Arbor event to a global event.
I know Jamie and Rick and myself have also shared the YouTube and Facebook links, but one thing that struck me, it's also on a Roku channel. Can you give that
That's right.
information?
Thanks to Rick Thompson. That's right.
Well, what's the name of that channel?
Great question. Rick, can you answer that?
Pro Cannabis Media, or PCM TV, on your Roku guide.
Thank you, Rick, for that. All right, Dawn, last thoughts.
Yeah, I'm just really grateful to be working with this team. It's been really fun. And like I said, I come from the industrial hemp side of the industry, specifically on industrial applications. So federal legalization of industrial hemp was made possible through cannabis reform. So it's really important work. Industrial hemp industry is potentially $1 trillion industry as we get the supply chain up and running. So just really grateful to be part of this.
Right on. Thanks for being on, Dawn. Jamie, do you have any last thoughts?
yeah, just thank you guys very much for having us on today. Thanks for having this show and covering this issue so well and tying it into a movement that is doing well, and just much appreciated. And I support that a lot. I guess just remind people we do have Jazz Cabbage Cafe Tuesdays 4 to 6 live on Facebook, and I'm really excited about tomorrow to support the online hash bash. Again, as everybody has said, we'd like to all have things be as normal as possible and be down there and all hanging together and stuff. It just doesn't work out like that this year, but this is a great alternative, and there's a lot of energy and time and thought put into it, and I'm really happy to be a part of that, and be looking forward to hanging out with everybody tomorrow.
And thank you to Jazz Cabbage Cafe, because without you, we would have never had our first episode.
Oh, yeah.
The rescue with half a second left. So thank you for that. Ann, last thoughts.
I just want to echo the thanking all you guys. You guys are the greatest, and and it's really exciting, what's happening in the field for mental health and research and people not getting in the criminal justice system.
Jim, any final thoughts?
Twitch.tv/A2hashbash tomorrow at high noon. That's my thought.
And all of our other social media links are on the Twitch TV channel.
Colin.
Community meeting for decriminalized nature, Michigan, on is it
Thursday, 6 p.m.
Thursday, 6 p.m.
Um,
And Mike, final thought?
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for being here. This is one of my favorite shows so far. This was some of my favorite people in the room. It's so amazing. I hope to have you all again. Thank you to our listeners. And we will see you in 2 weeks. But don't forget Hash Bash tomorrow. We'll see you there.
Happy Hash Bash,
Bye.
everybody.
Heavy hash
Thank
bash.
you.
Thank you guys.